call the Carlisle Village Council meeting to order. Would everyone please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Mr. Bicknell?
Here.
Mr. Jewett?
Here.
Mr. Licklider?
Here.
Mr. McIntosh?
Here.
Mr. McEldowney?
Here.
Ms. Tankersley? Here. Mayor Winkler?
Here. We've made a little adjustment to our meeting here this evening. We had an executive session scheduled. We're going to move it down till after the public forum and before the business portion of the meeting. So at this time, we'll move on with the minutes. I have a motion to suspend the reading of the minutes by the clerk. Ms. Tankersley?
Second.
Mr. Jewett? Roll call.
Mr. Bicknell?
Yes.
Mr. Licklider?
Yes.
Ms. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mr. McEldowney?
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mayor Winkler?
Yes. Before you are the minutes of our regular meeting of November 14th. Is there any additions or corrections to the minutes as presented? Hearing none, is there a motion to adopt the minutes as presented? Mr. Bicknell. Do we have a second?
Second.
Ms. Tankersley. Roll call.
Ms. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mr. McEldowney?
Yes.
Mr. Licklider?
Yes.
Mr. Bicknell?
Yes.
Mayor Winkler?
Yes. Minutes of November 14th have been adopted. Next, we'll move on to our public forum. And the first thing we have on our agenda this evening is an honor award to our police officer, Ethan Benz. And Chief Bruck would please come up and introduce Mr. Benz, please.
Mr. Mayor, Council, thanks for having us here tonight. Mr. Lenz is hiding. And he's off duty, so we want to thank him for coming in on his own time today. So Carlisle's first responders handle a lot of emergencies and save a lot of lives, and we don't really recognize that, or we don't advertise that a lot. And Officer Benz was recently involved in a series of things that I think warrant attention. While we get good response, excellent response from GEMS and other emergency services that we have, it's your police department that's here 24/7, and we're almost always the first person on any call for an emergency of any kind. On September 26, Officer Benz received a call from dispatch that a woman was choking on food at her home at the Carlisle Crossing Apartments. He responded emergency. Attempts by the woman's family to clear the food had failed, and she was not doing very well. GEMS was responding, but they were a ways away. Officer Benz arrived at the scene, immediately did the Heimlich maneuver on the woman, cleared the obstruction, and she was fine. GEMS even commented that he saved that lady's life that night. So it's just one of the things that we do that people, when they look at a police officer, they don't really think of those things. They think about tickets or donuts or something, but we are the first responders. Later, 4 nights later on that same week, Officer Benz responded to a drug overdose, one of our local residences. The patient there was unresponsive and not breathing, close to death. Officer Benz administered 2 doses of Narcan and then was assisted by a deputy who also administered Narcan. After 4 doses of Narcan, the subject was breathing weakly and made it until the paramedics made it on the scene. And in another event, that the things we do, we had Officer Benz investigated a call of a suicidal young man. He didn't want to go to the hospital, so we have the authority to put someone in the hospital for up to 72 hours for their own safekeeping, and Officer Benz took that action upon himself. And as a result of that young man being forced to go to the hospital, they found a serious medical condition that had contributed to his depression and suicidal behavior, and he was treated for that, and he's alive today because of it. So these are all things that Officer Benz did that, and while I don't normally like to point out one officer is doing something, because I would expect all of our officers to do the same thing. These are things that we do that we don't usually think about. And I think in recognizing Officer Benz, we're also recognizing the entire department and the hard work they do. So, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. First, I'd like to comment and publicly thank you for all your hard work. I've known you for quite a while now, and you're an outstanding young man. And it's an honor to have you here in our community working and protecting the citizens of the Carlisle community. And I have a little award for you. I'll meet you down front here.
He never smiles.
There it is.
Ethan's brother is a deputy with the Warren County Sheriff's Department, and his other brother is a officer in Mainville, and his father is retired and was a police officer in Lebanon, sergeant. So it's a family tradition for the, and I feel sorry for Mrs. Benz.
We have an award here for Officer Ethan Benz of the Carlisle Police Department. Is hereby awarded a life-saving award for your exemptional contributions to the citizens of the municipality of Carlisle, Ohio. You are hereby commended for your outstanding actions on September the 26th, 2017.
Thank you.
Public forum is still open. If there was anyone in the audience who would like to speak to council, please state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi there, name's Roger Britton, 280 Welcome Way. While we're in the spirit of fixing a few things like these ordinances we're having a little trouble with, I think we ought to keep in mind our local businesses and look into the sign ordinance. We do have a fine gun shop here in Carlisle, and I don't think a lot of people even know that because of the way they're too restrictive on our sign ordinance. So I would ask that you work a little more with them and try to make it a little easier for the man to make some money so he can stay in business. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Public forum is still open. If anyone else would like to speak to council. Yes, sir.
My name's Tom Volpe, 315 Ethelrob. Lived in Carlisle for about 10 years. Worked with James back in NCR days long ago.
Long time ago.
I'm curious about the parking, the process for looking into the parking, because some of the stuff I don't understand. 2 cars in a driveway or more seems natural, and sometimes my wife and I violate that with just moving stuff around and I get looked at. What was the genesis of the change? And you don't have to answer it now, but is there a public process where either the council or some other working group is going to get into how did we get here? Because apparently are they codes? Is that the name for it? Parking codes?
Yes.
Were changed fairly recently, like 5 years ago or something like
Yes.
that. So what led to this and what were they before? And
I wish I could answer that question. There was a committee
Okay.
of citizens that are on the Planning Commission and on the Board of Zoning Appeals that worked with some staff that is no longer here. And it took about a year-long process for them to go through our book of ordinances. It's about an 8-inch thick book.
Oh,
And so it was a very lengthy process. I wasn't involved in it personally, but apparently there was some things that slipped in there that shouldn't have been. And I wish I had a complete answer for your question, but
okay. Well, we know we gotta have rules. It's a city, can't have chickens and goats. Got it, right? And so there's gotta be some kind of parking regulations and setback ordinances and things like that. So is there a public process where the city's gonna look at that.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Okay.
We're going to have a work session tonight after our council meeting,
Okay?
and we're going to start discussion on that. And
Okay.
we're going to look at it and revise it, possibly.
Should I save other comments for the work session then? Because it's specific to
We
the
may
parking.
be asking for some public input in the work session.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, that's fine, yes, you
just
can do
one
that.
more thing then, if neighbors couldn't make it, it's Tom and Dee Ratcliffe, and Tom said he sent an email to one of you, but I don't know who. They've got a big fifth wheel, and it's in their driveway right now, they're getting ready for a trip. They've got a granddaughter graduating college and one thing and another. And what Tom would want is to change, apparently there's a 48-hour limit within 7 days to keep the RV or the fifth wheel in the property. He's 80 and he's moving kind of slow, so he says he needs just more time than the 48 hours. He'd like something like 72. He'd also says there's a parking permit period of 7 days. You can get an extension, like if you're getting ready for a trip or if you're cleaning and unloading when you get back. And he's not sure 7 days is enough. He'd like to see it longer. And he also said that him and Dee, they store it here just over the railroad tracks, and they pay $38 a month back in there. It's not a whole lot of money. It is money, but it's not
Okay.
significant. So that's what Tom would like. Thank you.
We'll certainly take that into consideration.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. Public forum is still open if anyone else would like to address council. Seeing none, we'll close the public forum. At this point, we have an executive session that has came upon us. So before we go into our business portion of the meeting, we're going to go into executive session for a very short period, and then we'll return for the business portion of the meeting. There may be some something to follow with our executive session in the business portion of the meeting. So may I have a motion to enter into executive session?
So moved.
You have to read the reason.
Yeah, well, it's to discuss the purchase or sale of local property. That's what the executive session is about. So we have a motion to go into executive session. Mr. Licklider, we have a second.
Second.
Mr. McIntosh, roll call.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh?
Yes.
Ms. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mr. Bignall?
Yes.
Mr. Licklider?
Yes.
Mr. McElDowney?
Yes.
Mayor Winkler?
Yes. We are now in executive session. So at this time, we'll move on to council reports. Mr. Bignell, would you like to start this evening?
I just have one thing. Just want to remind the community of the tree lighting on December 4th at 7 p.m. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Jewett?
I have nothing this evening.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Licklider?
I will also be quiet this evening.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McIntosh?
Yep. Just publicly, a thank you to Officer Benz. I think they left. But we do appreciate, his actions throughout that week and every night that he's on duty, as well as everyone at the police department. I think they do a really great job with what we have to offer resource-wise, which is a compliment to Chief Bruck. He continues to find really great talent and great people. So we appreciate his efforts as well. Secondly, I have just a reminder, this Saturday is the Franklin Township Moonlight Mistletoe Festival over at the Township Building. I know they have a petting zoo and animals and a lot of vendors and crafts and food and performances throughout the day from 12 to 8. If everyone could attend that would be great. Now, quick comment, we have a couple of new businesses here in town, but we do have one, Pizza Hotline, celebrating their 27th anniversary this week. So I would like to commend them for that, and I know they have some new blood coming through the ranks. I believe the heirs to the throne are kind of stepping in to help make some changes and do some things to try to get them back on pace where they used to be. So I would like to wish them luck and encourage everyone to continue to support Pizza Hotline. And just thank you to all the residents showing up to the last meeting. I've received several emails regarding the topic of the zoning changes, possible changes. So I would just like to say thank you for sharing their thoughts and concerns, and those will be taken into consideration. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. McEldowney.
Couple items I was going to mention. The Moonlight Mistletoe Festival, as Mr. McIntosh said, is this Saturday at Franklin Township Building, as well as the tree light on December 4th. Also like to thank the police department as well as Officer Benz for his hard work and dedication. And then finally, I meant to mention it last time. Thank you to Mr. Rushing on his first budget. Your work has not gone unnoticed, and at least I think you've done a great job in your first year in your position. So thank you for your hard work. And that's all.
Thank you. Mrs. Tankersley.
I also want to congratulate Officer Benz and tell him how proud I am that we have officers such as he. And I want to expand a little bit on the Christmas tree lighting on December 4th. Every year Carlisle tries to find someone to memorialize on tree lighting. And this year I've asked them to do it in memory of my son, who was killed January 16th, 2016 in a work training accident. So the tree will be lit in memory of Justin Tankersley. So I would appreciate everyone coming out and helping us remember him. Thank you.
We'll close council report. We'll move on to mayor's report, and everyone's just about stolen everything I had to talk about. So I'm going to pass tonight on to the manager's report.
Thank you. First of all, I need to make a public apology. I did not speak very well. I rewatched the council meeting last week, or 2 weeks ago, I apologize. And I did not articulate the process with the zoning administrator or with Mr. Walrab, and I'm not doing a very good job of articulating it now. But I do not want to give the impression that Mr. Walrab does not communicate with me, does not have my support and admiration for doing an extremely difficult job. He is often needs to speak with individuals and give them not so pleasant news. The feedback I've gotten from the community is that in general they find that they appreciate the communication he gives them, but I'm doing a horrible job at articulating. I'm still learning how to speak publicly in this role, but I just do not want to give any impression that Mr. Walrab does not work with me and I do not have any interaction with him and that he's out there rogue and he does not have my full support and admiration. So just wanted to say that. And then just a couple items tonight. The CSX crossings that are due to be closed, originally they were giving us an anticipated closing date for the 4 crossings, one on Union, one on Fairview, not 123, the crossing at Beekler, and then the crossing at Marks Pollen. They are going to be replacing railroad ties in the near future. Originally, they gave us an anticipated date of starting around November 30th. I just received communication from them yesterday that the crews are moving very slowly down the line. So at this point, they don't think they'll be in town until probably closer to December 15th. They're going to give us as much notification as possible with at least 24-hour notification. We will be trying to inform the public the best that we can. Facebook, if you're like this on Facebook, that's a good way to kind of stay up to date on those announcements, as well as our website in general. We have been keeping gyms as well as Franklin Township and the schools in the knows because it also impacts them. But we will keep you updated with the latest information. They originally thought it would only take about 1 to 2 days per crossing. They're now anticipating each crossing taking a little bit longer because the local asphalt plants have closed for the season. So they are going to have to truck in asphalt from farther away to get it here, which is going to take a little bit longer. So it will probably be not a very pleasant experience to live through, but once it's done, those crossings should be nice and smooth. Just wanted to give you an update on that. A couple other updates. ODOT, who did the 123 paving, they had a bunch of road repair signs throughout the community that stayed up a lot longer than their paving project. They went through town this week to remove those. So I want to let residents know that all those signs should be removed. If they somehow missed some of them, especially on the side seats or streets, please contact Town Hall and we will get in touch with ODOT to have them come back and pick them up to get them out of your yards. And then I wanted to just also invite the public, after they go to the Moonlight and Mistletoe celebration at the Franklin Township Building, the Carlisle High School is having their annual Cookies and Carols concert that features their choirs from 7th grade through high school. And Commons is opened up with various homemade cookies and desserts, and they do it. There's a little entry fee, I think, to go in, a few dollars, as I recall. It's a fundraiser for the choirs as well as a fun seasonal activity for them. And I believe that's all I have tonight.
Okay, thank you. We'll close manager's report. We have no committee reports this evening, no old or new business. We have no first readings of ordinances. We'll move on to second and third readings of ordinance and resolutions. Under letter A, ordinance 2017, transfer of $50,000 from the general fund to the Carlisle Business Park Fund. That is on for a second reading.
An ordinance authorizing the transfer of $50,000 from the General Fund 101 to Carlisle Business Park Fund 302 and declaring an emergency.
Is there any discussion? That will be on for a third and final reading on December the 12th. Ordinance 2117, transfer of $85,000 from the Eagle Ridge TIF Fund to the State Route 123 funds. That is on for a second reading.
An ordinance authorizing the transfer of $85,000 from the Eagle Ridge TIF Fund 210 to State Route 123 funds 412, 413, 414, and 415 and declaring an emergency.
Any discussion? That will be on for a third and final reading on December the 12th. Ordinance 1917, supplemental appropriations number 1. That is on for a third and final reading.
An ordinance to make reappropriations, supplemental appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures for the municipality of Carlisle during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2017, amendment number 1.
Any discussion? Do we have a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Mr. Licklider,
Second.
Mr. Bicknell, roll call.
Mr. McIntosh?
Yes.
Mr. Bicknell?
Yes.
Mr. Licklider?
Yes.
Mr. McEldowney?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Ms. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mayor Winkler?
Yes. Ordinance 1917 has been adopted. That's all we have on our regular agenda this evening, so we'll ask for an adjournment and then we'll move into our work session.
So moved.
Have a seat.
Second.
Ms. Tankersley. Roll call.
Mr. Licklider?
Yes.
Ms. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh?
Yes.
Mr. Bicknell?
Yes.
Mr. McEldowney?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mayor Winkler?
Yes. We are adjourned.